Every game franchise has some kind of mystery involved in it, whether it is outside or inside the actual game itself. And for every unanswered question regarding a certain piece of lore or aspect of a video game, theories will be created to try and answer said question. And Sonic is no exception to this. Sonic fan theories are found all around the internet nowadays. Given the franchise's numerous mysteries and inconsistencies with the stories, fan theories would naturally come about. However, there is a subsection of fan theories that don't necessarily have any solid evidence behind them, but they still make a significant amount of sense when you think about them. Those are what we like to call conspiracy theories. There are several wild conspiracy theories regarding Sonic scattered around subreddits and forums alike, with some being fairly simple and what you would normally expect from a Sonic fan theory, while others are outlandish, to say the least. So let's take a look at 20 of the wildest Sonic conspiracy theories to see if they hold up. Ugly Movie Sonic was a publicity stunt, starting with by far the most popular Sonic conspiracy theory. When the first trailer for the Sonic movie was released, people heavily criticized Sonic's design for looking terrifying. It was so bad to the point where the trailer faced major backlash, with people saying the movie was going to be terrible. All of this backlash eventually led Paramount to announce a delay for the movie so they could fully redesign Sonic to make him look more like, well, Sonic. And when the movie was eventually released with the new design, people loved it. The success of the first movie caused the creation of the Sonic movie cinematic universe, which wouldn't have happened at all if the original design had stayed. However, many people believe that this design currently seen in the Sonic movies was always supposed to be the design they were going with, meaning that the awful, ugly movie Sonic in the trailer was made intentionally to gather people's attention for the movie. This whole thing follows the idea that all publicity is good publicity, because even though the trailer received a lot of backlash for Sonic's design, it brought the Sonic movie into the spotlight, whether it was for good or bad reasons. And when they announced that they were redesigning Sonic, people praised them even more. Would people still have given the same amount of praise to the movie if this was the design from the start? I honestly don't know. So was this ugly movie Sonic design intentionally made to gather publicity for the movie? Well, no, definitely not. There are many inconsistencies to this theory, mainly because why would they go through this much effort just for marketing? Mind you, this trailer was not the only time we saw this ugly movie Sonic design. I think this post from a deleted user on the Sonic movie subreddit sums up my thoughts quite nicely. So they invest millions of dollars in fake posters, fake toy leaks, fake poster leaks, fake design leaks, a fake trailer with poorly chosen licensed music, a shoe deal that appeared on the Puma website, fake redesign seminars where they pay people to come in and pretend they're Paramount people talking about the design so they can leak it, paying off Tyson Hesse and telling him to pretend he made the redesign and delay their movie from being just in time for Christmas for marketing on an already over budget movie that has had 3 real leaks in October. Sorry pal, not buying it. Yeah. Well said, unknown Reddit user. So yeah, this theory very much falls apart when you look slightly below the surface. At first, this theory somewhat makes sense when you just look at the trailer and see how terrible the design is. But when you look at everything outside of the trailer that uses this design, the theory seems like a massive reach. So I'm going to say this theory is entirely unlikely. It could still be true, but from a business standpoint, Paramount would have only been losing time and resources by intentionally making Sonic's design bad. But at the same time, would they be making that much money off of the Sonic movies without the redesign? This is just a massive paradox and we can be here all day, so let's just move on. Sonic's world is created by Eggman. When you look at the original Sonic games, what do you normally think about when playing them? For me at least, I usually just worry about trying to finish the levels as quickly as possible while using the level design to assist me. But have you ever actually paid close attention to the level design in these games? I'm not talking about the actual design philosophy, but rather what the levels are made up of. Almost every classic Sonic level has its fair share of spikes, enemies, death pits, and just so many other hazards placed everywhere. What if Eggman intentionally placed all of this stuff in Sonic's world so Sonic wouldn't stop his evil schemes? This theory does kind of make sense, because why else would all of these traps and roadblocks be in Sonic's way? This does make me question though why Eggman didn't go further with this idea. While there are many things in the world to stop Sonic, there are also many things that help Sonic, like loops and tunnels for Sonic to roll through. Why would Eggman place all of these things if he knew Sonic was going to just roll through them and gain a ton of speed? Not to mention how there are several other things in the environment to help Sonic reach the goal quicker. So, does this theory hold up? Well, kinda. My theory is that Sonic's world originally had all of the things that help him progress in the levels, like the loops and whatnot, but Eggman is the one who added all of the spikes and stuff later to stop Sonic. So Eggman didn't entirely create Sonic's world, but he added a bunch of hazards to try and stop Sonic. This is also reflected in many levels throughout the Sonic series. For example, levels like Marble Zone and Hilltop have beautiful environments on the surface, but for some reason, there's just lava that will kill you if you fall in it. Why is there lava in an environment like this? Well, what if Eggman placed it to try and stop Sonic? Now it makes much more sense. So, in a sense, I do think this theory is likely. Sega released the wrong Sonic 06 build. We all know how much of a broken mess Sonic 06 is. There are so many bugs and glitches, and it's just an awfully designed game. All of this caused 06's reception to be terrible at launch, and even nowadays, it's considered as one of the worst video games ever made. When the game came out, people were shocked by just how broken and unfinished it was. How could a game as broken as this get approved to be released? But what if this version of the game isn't the version that they meant to release? What if they released a buggy and unfinished build of this game instead of the finished build? If you look at any piece of 06 pre-release footage, you can probably agree with me when I say that many aspects look better than how they do in the final game. The animations look smoother, the lighting looks better, and the physics, from what I can tell, look less slippery and more responsive. This just looks like a better game than what we eventually got. Now, games featuring better visuals and whatnot in demos to make the game look better as a tech showcase is nothing new, and it's still something that's practiced in Sonic games today. However, there are things in many pieces of pre-release footage that were just outright removed from 06 for no reason. The homing attack animations, for example, look so much better. Sonic doesn't just repeat the same animation after he homing attacks something multiple times. Why was that removed from the final game if it just looked better? And the weird thing about it is that these animations are actually in the final game, but are only triggered when using the white gem. Why? And then there are just so many things promised to be in the game that just weren't. Looking in the game's instruction manual, the thing that came with the game, there are features and items shown in the manual that aren't in the game. The manual details a shield item being present in the game, but it's just not there. The manual also mentions that Shadow's Chaos Blast wipes out everything on screen when in the final game, it just doesn't. Usually, instruction manuals are made after the game is finalized for release. So why are there features in the instruction manual that just don't show up? Well, maybe it's because this manual was made for a more finished build of the game. But is it even possible for a company as big as Sega to rush out an unfinished build of their next-gen massive Sonic game on accident? Well, considering that Sega just loves to rush things out for the holiday season, regardless of the quality, then I wouldn't put it past them. But for something as drastic as this, I just don't think it's very possible. Yeah, the stuff in the manual and early footage is very interesting, but I just don't think a mistake as big as releasing the wrong build of the game is very likely. Maybe they just accidentally deleted some of the data, because I just don't see how this is supposed to be the finished product. But I really don't have any other explanation, so I'm just going to say this theory is unlikely, but it's still very interesting to think about. But that's not the end of this theory. We're going to come back to this later. Sonic is not actually blue. Alright, this one is kind of stupid, but I thought it was funny, so let's talk about it. Now, when I say that Sonic is not actually blue, I'm not calling anybody colorblind or anything, because this color is blue. Don't worry. But what if Sonic doesn't have blue fur, and instead he's just wearing some sort of hedgehog suit? Sounds crazy, I know, but this is a conspiracy theory after all, so bear with me here. This theory all started in July 2020 when the official Sonic Instagram account posted a meme showing off Sonic's daily schedule, and at 11:30 p.m. on that schedule, it says that Sonic takes off his hedgehog suit, implying that Sonic isn't a blue hedgehog. Even though this was just a simple joke post from the Sonic social media manager, it did get everyone very speculative, and they started to find some quote-unquote evidence supporting this theory. In many of the official Sonic renders, you can see that where Sonic's arm connects to his torso, it looks like the fur isn't fur, but instead it's a sleeve of some sort. This same thing is found in many of the CG cutscenes as well. And in Knuckles Chaotix, there's a Sonic sprite that has tan legs, which is honestly very disturbing. Alright, so yeah, obviously this is just a joke by the Sonic Instagram account, and the other stuff is just the result of sprite and render errors, so there's not much else to say here. This theory is entirely unlikely, but honestly, it could be true, I guess. The Sonic Chronicles OST was accidentally deleted. Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood for the Nintendo DS is by far one of the worst Sonic games out there. Literally every aspect of this game is terrible, including the music, which surprised many, because pretty much every other Sonic game, whether fun or not, had a great soundtrack. And while all of them weren't fantastic or anything, they were at the very least passable. But the Chronicles soundtrack is quite literally ear-piercing, as they are all just shitty MIDI remixes of tracks from previous Sonic games. Nothing more. What the quote-unquote composers did was drag different MIDI files from different Sonic games onto a VST and called it a day. That's why all of these remixes are pretty terrible. But why is the OST so half-baked like this? Well, the leading theory is that BioWare actually had a fully composed soundtrack made for this game, but most of it was just gone by the time the game was released. So they had to panic and just make some MIDI remixes to fill the gaps. And there are still fully composed songs in the game, mainly the battle themes, so that further contributes to this theory. But as for the rest of the soundtrack, many believe that it was either scrapped due to legal reasons or they just accidentally deleted it, but nobody knows. This is still a huge mystery, but if you ask me, the soundtrack being deleted just makes more sense. If some of the soundtrack was cut for legal reasons, then why wasn't the whole soundtrack cut? Some songs being deleted is much more likely because you can easily just accidentally delete files. I do it all the time. So while it is possible that these songs could have been cut for legal reasons, I truly think a lot of it was deleted, making this theory very likely in my opinion. Hopefully one day we uncover the original soundtrack of Sonic Chronicles, because what we have now is terrible. I don't think a fully original soundtrack would have saved this game from being terrible, but it would be cool regardless. Every Sonic character knows they're in a video game. Ah yes, a classic fourth wall theory. So yeah, basically everybody in the Sonic series knows that they're just in a video game, and all of these events happening in the games are just for show. Ever notice how Sonic and the gang would constantly just break the fourth wall in many of the games? Games like Colors, Lost World, and even Sonic Boom all have moments where Sonic is breaking the fourth wall. In Colors, he even directly talks to the audience in one of the tropical resort cutscenes. But you know, breaking the fourth wall in cutscenes, that's just a normal cartoon trope. But during actual gameplay, it happens as well, especially in the classic games. If you wait around without doing anything for too long, Sonic will stare at the screen and tap his foot. In Sonic 3, he even points to the right to tell the player to hurry the hell up. In Sonic CD, if you wait around for too long, he says, "I'm out of here," and outright quits because the player isn't doing anything. So he just leaves. So the Sonic characters, or at least Sonic himself, seem to know that this is all just a video game and not something real. Now, while I don't think this theory is impossible, I do think it's highly unlikely. This isn't a Super Mario Bros. 3 situation where they tell us that it's just a show, but rather this is simply just breaking the fourth wall for comedic effect and player engagement. That's it. And these jokes are fairly uncommon anyway. They only happen a couple of times in Colors, and honestly, those are the only times I can think of off the top of my head. So I think this theory is unlikely. Moving on. Nintendo caused Sonic Extreme to be cancelled. Yes, Sonic Extreme, the debut 3D Sonic game that was said to be cancelled for time constraints and lack of resources. Near the end of this project's development, the developers were so understaffed to the point where there were only a few people still working on it. Yeah, it was pretty bad, so they had to cancel it. But what if there was another entity involved in this whole thing? What if Nintendo played a role in its cancellation? Let me explain. Super Mario 64, Nintendo's debut 3D platformer, was very successful. It did almost everything right for the type of game it was trying to be, and that's why today it is considered as one of the best 3D platformers of all time, and I couldn't agree more. Now, back in the 90s, Sonic and Mario were huge gaming rivals. I'm sure we're all well aware of this by now. However, with both of their 3D debuts scheduled to be released around the same time, speculation began to occur when Sonic's first 3D title got cancelled while Mario was taking the spotlight. The theory is that Nintendo somehow sent a disguised employee to try and sabotage Sonic Extreme's development. Some theorize that that person is none other than Yuji Naka, but we'll get into that whole thing later. So yeah, Nintendo was being greedy like they always have been and wanted to kill the competition so their new console and Mario game could succeed. But here's the cherry on top. Super Mario 64 along with the N64 released on June 23rd, 1996. Does that date look familiar to you? Well, it's actually Sonic's 5th anniversary. Yeah. Crazy, I know. The theory is that Nintendo sabotaged Sonic Extreme and sent it into development hell, and then released their brand new revolutionary Mario game and console on Sonic's birthday as a means to mock Sega. That's insane to think about. Would Nintendo ever stoop this low though? Honestly, I wouldn't put it past them. Nintendo has always been known for doing just plain greedy and scummy things in the gaming industry, so I wouldn't be surprised at all if they wanted to kill the competition for their brand new Mario game. Do I think this is true? No, not really. I don't think any of these theories are true, but I do think this one is somewhat likely. Sonic and his friends are humans. Y'all are really going to have to bear with me on this one. Do you ever notice how there's just a ton of stuff in Sonic games that doesn't ever line up with what actually happens? Like, Sonic says he runs at the speed of sound, but he just doesn't. If he did, we wouldn't be able to see him. So maybe Sonic and his friends are just human kids pretending to be super fast animals, and Eggman is their parent or guardian who is just watching them play around. This theory was posted by DatQueenBurrito, but was started started by RetiredMickeyMouse, in which it reads, "There's a theory going around that our beloved blue hedgehog and his friend don't exist in their actual dimension. You see, how do people go faster than the speed of sound? By machine, right? Well, by the human-animal race, running by itself isn't very fast. The theory states that Eggman was just a parent/guardian playing along, while the kids, the characters, Sonic, Tails, etc., pretended to be humanoid teenagers with special abilities. Their guardian is just probably a mechanic or inventor, not some crazed robot-making weirdo. You know how the Smash Bros. Games are just a kid playing with all of his Nintendo toys, and Master Hand is just the kid's hand controlling all of them? This is a very similar situation, but instead of toys, the characters are just kids, and Eggman is just playing along with whatever game they're playing. Now, if you apply this to literally any piece of fictional media out there, then it will make sense. If I'm like, what if Mario isn't actually a plumber, and it's just some kid pretending to be a plumber, and Bowser is not really a scary turtle, he's just the kid's dad in a giant Halloween costume, then obviously it will make sense, because there's really nothing to debunk it. Is the theory cool and interesting? Yeah, absolutely, but there's just no way to debunk it. So for my personal judgment, I'm just going to say it's unlikely. Because hey, these Sonic stories get pretty complex to the point where I don't think a child could be imagining all of this and building up this extensive lore. So yeah, no. Yuji Naka intentionally tried to kill the Sonic series. So this theory stems from the 06 one and the Sonic Extreme one. Yuji Naka, one of the people responsible for Sonic's creation, has made a ton of changes to the Sonic series. First, we were 2D, and that was fine enough, but when Sonic Extreme came around, he came in midway through development and told people, hey, we gotta start over, because he didn't want the developers to use the brand new Nights into Dreams engine, even though they already had a ton of progress done on Extreme. He didn't care, he just wanted to use a different engine for some reason and keep the Nights one private. He did deny this decades later, but by that point the damage was already done. So that's why I said he was the Nintendo employee who allegedly sabotaged the game. Maybe he was paid off by Nintendo to do that. Throughout Sonic's history, Naka was just not a fun person to work with, and even threatened to quit midway through several game developments numerous times. And when he was involved with a non-Sonic game, that game being Billy Hatcher, he bragged about being able to make a game that wasn't a Sonic game. It just seemed like he never enjoyed being part of the series and wanted it out of the spotlight as much as possible. His departure from Sonic Team in 2006 made people believe that he also had something to do with Sonic 06's failure, and the unplayable state that game was released in. Was he the one who intentionally released an unfinished and buggy build of the game to try and kill the series? If he was very close to being successful. But after he left Sonic Team, there was a huge tonal shift in the franchise soon after that would ultimately put the series back on track for like a couple of years. And then this happened. Man, why can't we have nice things? To be completely honest with you, I kinda see this being true. All evidence points to the fact that Yuji Naka was and still is not the nicest person to work with. And considering what he was doing with Sonic Extreme ultimately made the game worse in every way possible, then this theory is very likely if you ask me. Thankfully, the Sonic series is still here and well today. But ever since Sonic 06, people haven't looked at the franchise the same. Was Yuji Naka the reason behind all of that? I mean, it kinda makes sense. Tails died in Sonic 2 and the current Tails is not real. Ah yes, we had to get a darker theory on here somewhere, and you know what? Let me set the mood real quick. Alexa, turn off the lights. Did that work? Hey Google, turn off the lights. Oh, now I can't see. Anyway, in Sonic 2, no, not that Sonic 2, the 8-bit version of Sonic 2 for the Master System and Game Gear, there are two possible endings. So in the game, Tails gets kidnapped by Eggman and we have to save him. If we collect all of the Chaos Emeralds, then we save him and everything's good. However, if we fail to get all of the Chaos Emeralds, then the game ends with Sonic running in a field all alone. And then he looks up at the sky and sees Tails. Is Tails f***ing dead? When we don't save Tails, Eggman keeps him hostage and supposedly he dies. And you know the craziest part about this is that Eggman goes on to use Tails to create Infinite and Sonic Forces. When you think about it, Infinite and Tails have a lot in common. They were both seen as outcasts because of their uniqueness. Both of their names are similar. Infinite means unlimited or just an insane amount, while miles is a huge unit of measurement. Do you see the correlation there? And their tails also look kind of similar. The only difference being that Tails has two of them, of course. But if Tails died in Sonic 2 and was turned into Infinite, then who is the Tails seen in every Sonic game after Sonic 2? Is he just a figment of Sonic's imagination? Maybe a robot created by Eggman? I mean, that wouldn't be entirely out of the ordinary, since Shadow isn't an actual hedgehog, but he looks like he could be one. Maybe Eggman did the same as Gerald and made a fake version of Tails to be friends with Sonic, so he didn't realize he died. There's just a lot to this theory. But is it true? Absolutely not. This Tails constellation in the sky was literally just meant to tell the player that, oops, you didn't save Tails, play the game again to actually save him. Nothing more. This theory is highly unlikely because I don't think Sega would be that dark, especially in the game that introduced Tails. So yeah, Infinite is Infinite, and Tails is still the Tails that he has always been. Sonic CD hides an evil message. I've always found it odd how there are many creepy moments in Sonic CD, like the soundtrack for example, the US version that is. The Game Over screen has a very sinister sounding track with evil laughs. Always creeped me out as a kid, and the boss theme has a very similar effect. It sounds terrifying. Like, why were these tracks put in a Sonic game of all things? Yes, the Japanese/European soundtrack doesn't have any of this, and that's great, but it goes beyond that. There are many instances in the game where Sonic, well, game overs himself, I guess you could say. If you stand still in a level for too long, Sonic will just say, "I'm out of here," and leave. Now, you can interpret this however you want to, but there's also an unused sprite animation in the game files that shows, well, you can kinda just tell. Like, what the actual man? Oh, but that's not all. If you head to the game's sound test menu and enter the codes 12 and 25, you see this. Did you shit yourself? Don't be ashamed. I did too. We have this creepy pattern of Sonics with a weird humanoid face, and if you're playing with the US soundtrack, then that creepy boss music definitely doesn't help. And then the message translates to something along the lines of, "Fun is infinite at Sega Enterprises, signed by Majin." Majin supposedly means the devil. And you know what? I'm not even going to entertain this anymore. All of this has been debunked already. Some people thought that this was originally supposed to be some kind of anti-piracy screen, but no, it's really just supposed to be a funny Easter egg left in by one of the game designers. Majin, or Mazin, was a childhood nickname for Masato Nishimura, the game's landscape designer. So no, there's no demonic message or anything. But I still think it's kind of weird how there was just a bunch of downright creepy and kind of disturbing material put in this game. But no, this theory is unlikely. In fact, it's just not true. The Sonic 3 mural was used for Shadow's creation. This is another pretty popular one. Shadow the Hedgehog was introduced in Sonic Adventure 2, way after Sonic 3 was released. But something that people always wondered was, why is Shadow a hedgehog? Before Shadow, Gerald wanted the Bio-Lizard to be the ultimate life form, but when that failed, he created Shadow. But why a hedgehog of all things? Well, in Sonic 3, in the Hidden Palace Zone, there's a mural that's meant to depict Super Sonic going up against a godlike creature. This not only foreshadowed the ending of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, but it also implied that Sonic harnessing the Chaos energy was some sort of prophecy. That's cool, but where does Shadow play into this? Well, it's heavily theorized that Gerald used this mural as inspiration for Shadow's design. Hell, this is not the only mural that may have been used by Gerald. In Sonic Adventure, there's a giant one that shows Chaos, which could have inspired the design of the Bio-Lizard. So this theory remained pretty dormant for a while. That was until Sonic X Shadow Generations was released. In the game, you can collect pages from Gerald Robotnik's journal, and you can also get your hands on a physical release, which is quite cool as well. Anyway, Gerald does mention within these journal entries that when the Bio-Lizard was created, he used salamanders for their ability to regrow. So no, the Bio-Lizard isn't necessarily based on Chaos. But with the Shadow thing, unfortunately, there's no confirmation of the theory in this journal. However, Gerald does mention that he has visited Angel Island. He just dipped because he felt like he wasn't supposed to be there. Yeah, f***ing right. I think he definitely got a glimpse of this mural, and yes, I do think this theory is very likely. Sonic is homeless. Ever notice how Sonic never really settles down in one place? He's constantly trotting the globe, going on different adventures with all of his friends. So it makes sense that he doesn't have a place to call home. Some people may be quick to say that Green Hill is Sonic's home, and while that may be true when it comes to the comics, Sonic Prime, or the Sonic movies, but in the games, there's not really any explicit evidence that suggests that Sonic's home is Green Hill Zone. Well, recently there was a book published that says that Sonic lives in Green Hill Zone, so maybe he actually does have a home. Yeah, still no. Chris, the associate lore manager for the Sonic series, replied to a post talking about this book, saying that it was a mistake and confirming that Sonic is actually homeless. In my opinion, I don't think Sonic really needs a home. I mean, in all seriousness, does the guy even sleep? He's constantly on the run, helping other people. He has no time to slow down and relax. But there's also a part of me that's like, well, come on, dude, is Sonic's home being Green Hill really that crazy to the point where they had to remove it from a book? But Whatever, the theory is very likely. In fact, it's confirmed. The Sonic multiverse is real. The whole multiverse trope is pretty common in many pieces of media nowadays. In my opinion, it's almost overused to the point where multiverse stories nowadays just feel stale. I think we can all sort of tell that there's maybe some sort of multiverse going on in the Sonic series. I mean, think about it. How many interpretations of Sonic have we had alone? Classic Sonic, Modern Sonic, Prime Sonic, Boom Sonic, Movie Sonic, the list goes on. And that's not even mentioning everything within Sonic media that hints at a multiverse. I mean, we had Sonic Prime, which explored many different universes which feature different iterations of the main cast of Sonic characters. And I know it's easy to quickly go and be like, oh, it's Sonic Prime, it means nothing. But Sonic Prime has been confirmed to be canon, and that further adds to this theory. How on earth are we supposed to believe that this is the same Sonic we've been playing as in the games? Well, I don't think he is. Sure, Sonic Prime can be canon all at once, but I think it exists in a separate universe from the main Sonic game universe. That would make much more sense instead of trying to do mental gymnastics to somehow prove that Prime Sonic is the same as Game Sonic. And as for adaptations that have been confirmed to be non-canon, like the movies for example, those can easily be in a separate universe as well. And it's actually easier to do that because it's not canon, it's an adaptation, a different interpretation of the stories from the games. That's the entire point of a multiverse. And even within the games, we have Sonic Boom, a completely different take on Sonic that doesn't fit in with other games at all, despite references to Sonic Boom characters appearing in other games, like Sticks appearing in Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, and Amy name-dropping Sticks in Sonic Frontiers. Maybe the Sonic Boom Sticks is just Sticks from a different universe. Now, I guess the only question that remains is, will these universes ever cross over? We've already had time travel multiple times throughout the Sonic series, Sonic CD, 06, Generations, Boom, Forces, Generations again. Since that trope has been used so many times before, I wouldn't be surprised at all if, in the near future, we got a multiverse game that includes many different versions of Sonic. Do I want that? Absolutely not. Again, I don't like multiverse stories, but I do think Sega could be hinting at one big crossover moment between all of these different interpretations of the Sonic franchise, making this theory pretty likely in my book. Sonic is a criminal. One of the weirdest parts of Sonic Adventure 2 is that so many people mistook Sonic for Shadow. Amy thought Shadow was Sonic without taking a good look at him, and Sonic got jailed by Gun when they were going after Shadow. But it's really weird because they don't really look that similar. Sure, they're both hedgehogs, but they have different color palettes, different quills, you get the idea. But what if Gun was actually trying to capture Sonic the whole time? What if Sonic was rightfully captured? Well, that begs the question. What the hell did Sonic do? Apart from committing multiple instances of property damage throughout the years, like, bro, watch where you're going. That, along with fleeing from the police, breaking every speed limit imaginable, and more property damage, I actually think this might have something to do with the events of Sonic Adventure 1. What happens at the end of that game? Perfect Chaos completely destroys Station Square, likely costing dozens of lives and leaving the city in ruin. But don't worry guys, Sonic is here to save the day. But when you think about it, this is all kind of his fault. He let the emeralds get into the wrong hands, which powered up Chaos. Even though Eggman was the evil mind behind all of it, Sonic was the catalyst who left the Chaos Emeralds unprotected. This applies to Knuckles too with the Master Emerald. So Sonic and Knuckles giving up the Chaos Emeralds to Eggman caused him to feed the emeralds to Chaos, which led to him destroying the city, leading the government to hold Sonic responsible. Yeah, I know, right? That's one hell of a slippery slope. But actually, no, I don't think this theory is true. Obviously, Gun was looking for Shadow because he escaped the cryo chamber, and they just somehow looked at Sonic and thought he was Shadow. I don't even know. Regardless, I think this theory is unlikely, but Sonic could definitely be classified as a criminal in certain scenarios, just not in this particular case. Metal Sonic is Sonic from the future. Sonic CD is all about time travel, and as the player, you have the ability to travel back to the past in order to create either a good future or bad future for the zone you're playing in. I'm sure we're all aware of this by now. Good futures are bright and lively, but bad futures usually result in everything being roboticized and left in ruin. The theory states that Metal Sonic, instead of being created by Eggman from scratch, is Sonic, but from the bad future. In the bad future, Sonic fails to defeat Eggman, so Eggman roboticizes him and turns him into Metal Sonic. And then he used the Time Stones to get Metal Sonic back to the present to fight, well, himself. This theory is also supported by Sonic Heroes. In that game, Metal Sonic is constantly saying that he's the real Sonic. And as the player, we just kind of assumed he was talking about how he was more powerful than Sonic or something. But what if he actually is the real Sonic? What if his whole arc in Heroes was just him trying to get revenge on Eggman? I think that makes a lot of sense. But then another question arises. Can Eggman even turn Sonic into a robot? We all just kind of assume he can because he always traps the flickies inside of his robots. But what about a full-sized head Hedgehog? The answer is still yes, and the proof is in none other than Sonic Lost World. If you've played this game, then you may or may not remember that the Deadly Six were actually trying to turn Sonic into a robot using Eggman's tech, but they accidentally snagged Tails in the process, who then hacked the system so he wouldn't be completely turned into a robot. So it's clear that Eggman has the ability to turn pretty much whatever living being he wants into a robot. But there's one pretty major flaw that kind of hinders this theory. If Metal was out to get revenge on Eggman and Sonic Heroes, then why wasn't he doing the same in Sonic CD? He was actually working for Eggman in Sonic CD. Was he just confused, overcome by anger, so he forgot who he truly was? I mean, it wouldn't be the only time this has happened in the series, like with Shadow's whole revenge plot. So I guess that is the best explanation. But would he really want to fight against his past self? I don't know. I'm still going to say this theory is likely because too many things line up, but this theory is not without its flaws. The games are in a time loop. One of the most prevalent ongoing debates within the Sonic community is whether the games are supposed to have a consistent continuity or not. Are all of these games supposed to be a part of one massive timeline, or are they supposed to be episodic adventures that stand on their own? While both can be true, it seems that recently there has been an extended effort to make that continuity a little too obvious. I mean, in Frontiers alone, we had countless references to previous games, other characters, etc., which was basically their way of saying, yep, everything is canon. But that really doesn't make much sense when you realize how different these games are from one another. Obviously, every Sonic game introduces new ideas, but this applies to pretty much every aspect of the game: the level environments, art style, and most importantly, Sonic's characterization. Within the games alone, Sonic has gone through so many different iterations, but how does that make sense when this is supposed to be the same character that we've seen throughout the franchise's history? Well, here's where the theory comes in. It's theorized that every time Sonic and crew use the Chaos Emeralds, the timeline completely resets to the beginning of that adventure and warps reality. This is how we see different environments, different tones, different art styles, and everything in between in different Sonic games. We know from multiple points in the series that the Chaos Emeralds have the ability to manipulate time and space, so it would make sense for the timelines to reset every time Sonic and crew use the Chaos Emeralds. This could also explain the inconsistent lore. You can reference previous games as much as you want, but there's a point where it starts to not make sense anymore. I know I used this example earlier in the video, but when Styx was name dropped in Sonic Frontiers, that opened up so many different plot holes because we all thought that Boom wasn't supposed to be canon. But if Boom just took place in one of those timeline resets, then that's not an issue. There are a few problems I have with this theory though. For one, the Chaos Emeralds are not used in every game, so the timeline can't be reset at the end of each game. For two, if the timelines do get reset at the end of each game, then how does Sonic remember moments from previous games? And finally, if the timelines reset every time the Chaos Emeralds get used, then literally nothing would happen. Sonic couldn't go super because everything would just reset. Shadow wouldn't be able to use Chaos Control either. So I think this theory is pretty unlikely, but it's a cool idea. Sonic is just a Dragon Ball clone. Alright, I'm going to be 100% serious with y'all. I don't know a single thing about the Dragon Ball series, and I know that may be crazy coming from a Sonic fan. So I'm going to leave this to my good friend Chao of 10, who can explain this much better than I can.
Yeah, you're right. I can do it better, you dumbass. Can't even watch Dragon Ball for 5 seconds. It's a tale as old as time. Ever since like Sonic 2, Sonic the Hedgehog has always been compared to Dragon Ball Z. But there's a theory that the entire series is basically just Dragon Ball Z but told with these characters. Starting off with what is probably the most obvious one, Super Sonic being inspired by the Super Saiyan. You can even see one of the concept arts for Super Sonic is a direct one-to-one pose with the first panel from Dragon Ball Z where Goku goes Super Saiyan. And also, it's interesting that after Sonic 2, the amount of emeralds changes from 6 to 7, almost like it's mirroring the 7 Dragon Balls. It's been said multiple times that Silver from Sonic 06 takes heavy inspiration from Trunks from Dragon Ball Z, and that Shadow takes heavy inspiration from Vegeta. Even one of his early concept arts, one of the keywords says Vegeta. Knuckles is constantly compared to Piccolo because they both used to be an enemy or a rival of the main character, but then turn to the good side. And one of my favorite theories is that the entirety of Sonic Frontiers Final Horizon is just a retelling of the Frieza saga from Dragon Ball Z. Sonic's friends try to find the 7 Chaos Emeralds, while Sonic is out training to become stronger to fight the main villain, who is a world-ending deity that can destroy planets, and it's only until Sonic unlocks a new form that he is able to defeat the world-ending deity. In Dragon Ball Z, Goku is out training while his friends go find the 7 Dragon Balls to try and defeat a world-ending deity, aka Frieza, and it's not until Goku finds a new form, aka Super Saiyan, that he is able to defeat the deity. And another major comparison is that the Kokos are mostly compared to the Namekians because they're the natives of the island, while the Namekians are the natives of planet Namek, and they're the only two that know the location of their respective MacGuffins. So yeah, when you add everything up, it's easy to see how Dragon Ball and Sonic are very similar, let's put it at that. You see, I wouldn't have to say any of this if Riley just watched the damn show!
Sonic doesn't age. Despite the game seemingly taking place over several years, Sonic has always remained the same age. Now, while his actual current age is unconfirmed, game manuals tell us that he is around 15 to 16 years old, and he has been that age forever now. But why is that? Well, it's theorized that because Sonic goes so fast, time moves slower for him. Think of the scene in the first Sonic movie in the bar. When Sonic goes really fast, it looks as if time just slows down around him. What if that pauses his aging as well? This would explain why he hasn't really looked that much different over the years. But even if this theory isn't true, there still isn't any solid proof that Sonic actually does age. Like, does he even have a canonical age anymore? I don't really think it matters that much, but as for the theory itself, I think it's kind of likely, I guess. Sonic was an alien warning, ending it off with by far the craziest and most outlandish Sonic theory I have ever seen. Basically, Sonic wasn't created to be a video game character. Well, he was, but his true intention was to serve as a warning of extraterrestrial life existing in our universe. Let me try to explain this. First, we have Sonic's design. He's supposed to be a hedgehog, but he shares many humanoid attributes as well, and he's blue. That, along with his big eyes and speedy abilities, make him a pretty good representation of what aliens could look like. And then the game itself was released in 1991, and at this time, UFO sightings were becoming more common. So they created a game with environments partially overrun by robots and machinery to show people what alien civilization could look like. And in earlier versions of Sonic 1, UFOs were present in the background, further adding to this theory. Then we have the Chaos Emeralds, which can symbolize extraterrestrial artifacts. The emeralds have the ability to manipulate time and space, which may have been implemented to show how that power could be possible if aliens existed, and Eggman abusing the powers of the emeralds serves as a warning of how that power could easily fall into the wrong hands and can be used for bad reasons. And then we have the Sonic movies. In the movies, the characters are explicitly stated to be aliens from another planet, and the movies were intentionally made this way to get Sonic back into the mainstream and make the audience familiar with his alien-like design again. The Sonic series as a whole was created with the intention of having the human race become familiar with extraterrestrial life. Okay, no, it wasn't. I don't even need to explain why this theory is just a load of horse shit. It's very, very, very unlikely, and that's all that needs to be said about that. Well, there you have it. Those are a handful of Sonic conspiracy theories. While most of these are not true in the slightest, they are really fun to think about, and that's why I really like talking about them. But let me know your thoughts on these theories in the comments down below. Which ones do you think are true? Which ones do you think are false? I'd love to hear your thoughts. But that's all from me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all later. Goodbye.